Good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are. And it's time to talk about the dark side of the ring. Season 4, episode 4, whatever happened to Doink the Clown. I'm here with Gaz. How you doing?
I'm doing very well.
And Shredder Lincoln. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing very good, thanks. Gaz, is that your microphone that's causing that buzzing?
No, that's what I said. No, I'll mute my voice.
All right, no, I don't know. Maybe it's coming from my end, but no,
Me,
I'm good.
that comes
Thank you.
from
I'm
my
good.
end.
Thanks for it. I'm good. Thanks, guys. This was a fun episode. Well, I say fun. It was an intriguing episode. Let's put it that way. And it will be an interesting discussion to say the least.
Yeah, this was for me once again a very fascinating episode of Dark Side of the Ring. Got an education when it came to old school wrestlers. Mike Osborne being one of the pioneers of the industry, so to speak, when it came to wrestling, second generation wrestler. He was part of the part of WrestleMania 1, and not many people can say that. Fighting Ricky Steamboat of all people as well. So yeah, he was there from the very beginning, as far as a lot of people are concerned, when it came to what wrestling we have today. Uh, like unfortunately, like many wrestlers, he went down a downward spiral, but he did create one of the most memorable gimmick characters of all time. That, in my opinion, that will leave its mark in the industry and never really truly be forgotten. And yeah, we'll get all on about that. First of all, Shredder, just a little general consensus of this episode. Well, how did you find it?
Again, for me, this kind of epitomized Dark Side of the Ring. You said that okay, that Matt Bourne went on a downward spiral. I would
Oh yeah,
counter
Matt
that, and I
Bourne,
would
sorry.
say, I would counter that and say that from the looks of this episode, and actually from the look of his career, it felt like it was pretty much always a downward spiral. Probably some of it his own making, some of it potentially from psychological issues too.
Yeah, I'll go with that for sure. Guys,
Yeah, because I kind of knew that he was like a worker in the territory days, and that he came to be doing later in his life. But I didn't know he was this troubled. I mean, I'd heard, you hear stories like because like he used to do KV commentaries used to do like these lists, and he would sometimes be on it, and he seemed rather lucid then. But obviously, those were on his good days, apparently. So it's rather sad that the guy couldn't at least get help or at least get on something to at least alleviate some of the problems he was suffering from. I mean, like this episode, I mean, it was very emotional in a lot of places, but it was also very weird. Just just a lot of weirdness going on, especially towards the end. Just like especially
yeah,
the with his last girlfriend and like his family, like kind of like the animosity is still there. It's just like whoosh.
Oh yeah, over the cause of death.
the
Yeah.
conspiracies were thick and fast in the end of this episode, and everyone has their issues regarding what truly happened to him. Unfortunately, though, Osborne died at a very young age, 55. I mean, it's not surprising really because what he did to his life, but nevertheless, 55 is way too young. Got a message here from Daniel Vance saying, "I don't recall Doink. Really? I mean, how old are you, my son?"
I
But I
do.
do recall him wrestling with Hacksaw and DBRC. I
The
mean, those
Rat
guys
Pack.
are cornerstones of of that particular era for sure. Those two. I would like to say regarding Hacksaw Jim Duggan, he's one of those. He's a guy who's been the face for most of his career, and rightfully so. He's a very likable guy, but unlike most faces, he's actually genuinely seems like a good guy. You know,
Well, I suppose it depends who you ask. If you asked Balls Mahoney, then he would have said otherwise. Balls Mahoney had to be
okay.
refrained from stabbing him.
Look, I'm sure you can't get along with everyone, and you're gonna have issues with certain people. Look, even with amongst ourselves. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who truly hate us, even though we don't like to think of ourselves as the worst people in the world, and maybe we like to consider ourselves to be a bit righteous as well. But nevertheless, from what I've got from Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and it was really good to see him, you know, not playing this fucking stupid idiot sort of patriotic, you know, buffoon. It was just good to see him be himself, and you know,
yeah, I got a horrible feeling he was gonna kayfabe the whole thing when he gave his intro and said, "Oh, I'm Hacksaw Jim Duggan." Oh,
yeah.
I thought he was gonna fucking kayfabe the whole thing, but no, he was a fairly good interview for this. I'm quite surprised they didn't get Ted DiBiase, although DiBiase's suffering some legal issues at the minute, so maybe he's trying to stay away from cameras. Jim Duggan, that was an interesting portion of his career that they discussed, which was when he was working in Mid-South as part of a trio called the Rat Pack with Ted DiBiase and Jim Duggan.
Yep.
And he held the Mid-South tag titles with Ted DiBiase.
I just want to just to stick with Hector. I actually saw him a long time ago, like over 30 years ago. I saw him at Brent Cross Shopping Centre in London. He was signing autographs. This was just before SummerSlam, I believe, at Wembley. It was amazing because there he is, he looked like he was going to wrestle. I mean, the guy's fucking half naked, you know, in Brent Cross Shopping Centre. like he's in his wrestling attire and stuff. But what was so cool about him was that within every couple of minutes or so, he would just do a ho like that, you know, and it's brilliant. The guy was just brilliant.
And that's the thing, though. I mean, Duggan, most of us remember him as a babyface because, you know, if you're under a certain age, you never saw him work as a heel.
Yeah, I remember that period in TNA, where he became a Canadian, you know, defector.
Oh no, that was WCW.
Oh, that
was the final years of WCW when he was forced to join Team Canada.
Yeah, I'm sure he loved that. You know, but
I'd say what you want about the guy. He's still working today.
Yeah, he still does independent shows today, and that's after he's beaten cancer as well.
And I'm not a big fan of patriotism, but even though his whole gimmick is that, I still find him very endearing. You know, there's just something about the guy. I can't help but like him, and even Mick Foley said, you know, like, yeah, if you don't like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, or Hacksaw Jim Duggan doesn't like you, then there's something seriously wrong with you. So, but yeah, we'll get to all of that. So seeing him initially starting off at WrestleMania was amazing. He was basically a stalwart with all these other guys who kind of started at the beginning of Vince McMahon's tenure as being the main guy of the WWE. You know, people like Tito Santana, obviously Hulk Hogan, and Randy Savage, and Ricky Steamboat, and various others. And he was constantly getting hired and fired and trying to find his place. But he was one of these like legitimate tough guys as well. He wasn't the tallest wrestler in the world, so he bulked himself up. Being 6'1" in Vince McMahon era, you know, you're looked upon as a small guy, unfortunately. But he did bulk himself up. Looking at his face, he kind of looks a little bit like Mark Calloway, Undertaker. I'm not sure if you guys agree.
Maybe in his later years, but I wouldn't say throughout the majority of his career, no.
Really? Okay. Just for looking at his face, he's got that little bit of a look about him.
And he didn't really exactly just bulk up just for Vince McMahon's territory. I mean, he bulked up as well, you know, in his first few years in the business. It was about, I think he'd been in the business for about 7 or 8 years by the time WrestleMania 1 rolled around. He'd been working Mid-South for Bill Watts at that point, and Bill Watts would have, you know, chewed him out if he hadn't got a physique for him.
He obviously had issues with drugs, and he was taking them a lot. He had his groupies as well. He met a lot of different women. Some of them ended up being his girlfriends as well. But at that particular stage, there was still some territories around, but as they were all getting chewed up by the WWE machine, you know, he kept having to go back to the WWE, and he just kept fucking up his life. I'm kind of surprised. I'm kind of surprised. You hear all the stories about all the drug taking within the WWE. I'm kind of surprised that his drug taking was always making him get fired. Don't you think?
Not necessarily. Tully Blanchard was fired for cocaine use, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
That screwed him up going back to WCW. He was supposed to go back to WCW with Arn Anderson after his run as the Brainbusters was ending in the WWF. And as soon as Jim Herd found out about the cocaine violation, he ripped up Tully's contract.
But
I think a lot of it depended on how you behaved as well, in like the locker room and in the backstage area.
Yeah, but it was a bit of a but they're quite boisterous back then. But what I want to say is that what sort of drugs people were taking? Because if it's like performance enhancing drugs, maybe Vince was more likely to turn a blind eye to recreational drugs like cocaine.
Yeah, I think in some cases he would have turned a blind eye. I think as long as you weren't showing up too messed up to perform, which unfortunately from some accounts Matt Bourne was, and that's what led to his being fired on several occasions. So I can get why he was fired for his drug use. If he's showing up, after like 8 days or whatever it was, high on cocaine, and he's not fit to perform in the ring, I can see the WWF saying, okay, well, no, we can't take a risk on this guy. He can't stick around, not in our locker room.
Yeah, fair enough. Anything you want to add, guys?
No, it was just like, he had a pretty decent match with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I know Steamboat could get a lot out of a little, but even saying that, he looked like he was holding his own against Steamboat. I thought his work in the territories was really good. Like, he seemed to be laying his punches in, seemed to be like pretty good with the moves and stuff like that. He wasn't somebody who came across as like just doing them. And it's just good to see that he kind of was like this. I don't think he really had a persona to begin with, because I don't know, because from what everyone was saying, just like it seems to be he was just a tough guy. It's fair enough, but I mean, I think back then you needed to have like an over the top persona to kind of get over.
Yeah,
a very funny comment here. Sorry, Shred. I'd argue that if you're doing cocaine for 8 days straight and make your way to the ring, you're fit to wrestle.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, in fairness, I mean, what was it Jeff Hardy been doing when he struggled out to the ring for that 90-second match with Sting?
Yeah. But he looked like he looked more like properly intoxicated than high.
But what I was about to say was the fact that you had to be a good worker back in those days to get into territories like Mid-South, and you had to fucking lay it in. You had to make the shit look good. But here's the thing. Back in those days, Matt Bourne was from the school of where you did lay it in and you made it look as legitimate as possible, but obviously you just made it look good. You weren't beating the shit out of somebody and, actually hurting them. It wasn't like, say, George Goulas, where George Goulas his stuff would look like shit, but it would hurt.
So one of the things that we got from this documentary was a time when B. Brian Blair and Bourne had interaction with each other, and as I said earlier, like it was a bit of a boys' club, and there were maybe some backstage bullying. Now, I do feel there's a lot more harmony, and there's a lot less ribbing and hazing within WWE locker rooms nowadays. But back then, it was like more like a fraternity, so to speak. And I think you should never judge a book by its cover, because I think that's what Matt did when he saw B. Brian Blair.
I was paranoia when he saw B. Brian Blair. He was accusing Brian of hitting on his girlfriend, which Brian didn't.
Well, why, I have no idea, but they ended up fighting several times, and Blair showed that there's more to him than meets the eye, and beat the shit out of him. And it was only until he got like sucker punched or grabbed from behind that that Matt actually had the upper hand against him. So much so that he went for the eyes, and it was who stopped it?
Ivan Koloff.
Ivan Koloff. Remind me who he is again.
the Russian Bear. He was he was a fake Russian for most of his career in the NWA.
Was he the guy who was supposed to take over from Magnum TA?
No, that was Nikita Koloff. Ivan Koloff was
Okay.
the original one of the Koloffs, the Russian Bear.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, but it kind of showed you what sort of person Matt was, because he kind of maybe took things, he was over the top with certain things. I think a lot of the drug use made him go that way. We also saw or heard the story about how he beat the shit out of a particular mark who did initially sucker punch Hacksaw Jim Duggan, but once this person got hit back, it was the end of it as far as Hacksaw Jim Duggan was concerned. But Matt didn't want to leave it alone, and then he hit him apparently so hard that his fucking eyeball came out of his socket. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, first of all, the Brian Blair fight. Brian Blair was able to hold his own in a fight. He was actually somewhat of a shooter, but he wasn't like. I know he had heat with the Iron Sheik for a number of years because he said that he could out wrestle the Sheik legitimately, but he eventually apologized for that. But you could see in some of those kayfabe commentary interviews that Gaz was talking about. There is actually quite a prominent scar around the bottom lip of Matt Bourne in those interviews because Brian Blair bit off his bottom lip.
Bloody hell.
During the fight, because Matt Bourne, when they were down on the ground, Matt was trying to pull Brian's head in and bite his nose off. And that's when Blair took it upon himself and he bit off the bottom part of Matt Bourne's lip. And again, that's when eventually, after sometime later, the Bourne jumped him from behind, was trying to reach around and pull his eyeball out, and when Koloff stepped in and kicked his hand away. As for the incident in Mid-South, a fan had sucker punched Jim Duggan, and Duggan retaliated. He knocked this guy out, and that should have been the end of the matter. It's a case now of time for the cops to pull this guy away. But Bourne kicked this guy in the head while he was down and fractured his orbital bone and allegedly knocked his eye out. So that led to lawsuits against Duggan, against Bourne, against the promotion, and as a result, Bill Watts had to step in. And I think there have been other issues with Matt Bourne before that, according to Watts at least.
I wouldn't be surprised.
He's somebody that I wish they had interviewed for this because I think he is still alive, and he could, probably give you some insight into what went on back in the days when he was running territories. But as a result, Duggan was kept on because he was a solid worker. Bourne was fired because he'd gone too far.
Gary?
No, I was just going to say, it sounds like he had severe, mental health issues with maybe, controlling his anger or controlling his temper, because he sounds like, even without the drugs, he's had severe problems with that.
Well, if you listen to one of his wives, not Maria, the first one, I think, I can't remember, was it Maria, the first one, or Michelle, the second wife, that said that his mother had abandoned him as a child and told his father, "You look after that little bastard. I want nothing to do with him."
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
so that probably stayed with him for the rest of his life, and I don't know if that maybe contributed to some anger issues he's had, because obviously he's been rejected by his own mother.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's had issues because of that, but he wasn't just somebody who would, unfortunately for him, he wasn't just somebody who would maybe just go after fellow wrestlers and have a pissing contest with them with stupid scuffles and fights, as well as maybe retaliating to marks who go over the top. He would actually beat up on his own family, and when it came to the territory days, like the Mid-South, then wrestlers often did get into brawls with fans. Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Hercules, Jim Duggan in particular as well. A lot of those guys wound up getting into fights with fans because fans
would legitimately try and attack heels. And that was usually happened. In some cases, the promoters even said to the guys, if you lose a fight to a fan in a bar or you get knocked out by a fan, you're out my fucking territory.
Yeah, might be really hard for heels then. I mean everyone hates them and they could lose their job.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's been stories about where there was I can't remember, I wish I could remember off the top of my head which wrestler it was, but there was one heel who had gone to he'd just literally gone shopping. He'd go and get some groceries, and somebody fucking pulled up with a pistol.
Yeah,
they legitimately wanted to kill him.
Yeah, ridiculous. He almost, in a way, the end of kayfabe is a good thing regarding how people react to wrestlers nowadays. But at the same time, you almost wish it was still intact so people could still believe what they were watching as genuine. Because,
cocaine was also coming into vogue in the 1980s. That was for a lot of the time that was Matt Bourne's drug of choice. I don't know if maybe Cousin Cheeto could confirm this, but isn't paranoia one of the big signs of cocaine use?
I'm
pretty sure paranoia was one of the side effects for for severe cocaine abuse.
Well, I know he did weed as well, and somebody who
he smoked weed. I mean, I think pretty much everybody in the wrestling business at one point has smoked weed.
I mean, that would make him paranoid as well, but with the cocktail of drugs he was doing as well. But he was doing various types of pills as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, pills. Again, it was pills. It was mostly pills, and it was mostly cocaine. Although there was alcohol abuse in there as well. With Bourne, though, again, as you pointed out, it didn't just stay with getting into fights with fellow wrestlers or getting into fights with fans. There was some domestic violence there too. So his first wife pointed out that, the second wife had said that everybody else married him for the money, but the first wife, I think that was Maria, had said that she walked out with their daughter and just a suitcase, and that was it, because it got to the point she couldn't take it anymore when he was flicking lit cigarettes at her.
That was the first wife, yeah, I remember.
I think that was the first wife that happened.
How many kids has he got? He's got 3 or 4.
At least 3 that I'm aware of.
Yeah, they mentioned he has a son. He wasn't on the screen. He hasn't passed or anything like that, has he?
Yeah, that was with the second wife, Michelle.
Yeah,
because they interviewed his daughter from his second marriage, and she has a younger brother as well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what really elevated his career in a way, and has put him on the map, in my opinion, as somebody who will never be forgotten in the industry. And that's obviously Doink the Clown. Now, before that happened, it was Road Warrior Animal who saw him smoking cigarettes and stuff and said that, there's Krusty the Clown. And from that, Doink emerged, I believe. Or was it his idea to give to Vince, or was it Vince's idea to give to him?
Supposedly, this was a collaboration between both Vince McMahon and Matt Bourne to come up with this idea for an evil clown.
Yeah. And I love evil clowns, by the way. Killer Clown from Outer Space, It, and stuff like that.
He got the gimmick over. I mean, Doink was over. He was one of the few bright spots of the early 90s.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and he brought some legitimacy to that character as well, which is hard to imagine considering that he's a fucking clown. But nevertheless,
he's going to beat you up and he's going to be laughing doing it.
And back then, it seemed that everybody needed a gimmick, and he finally found one. Because he was just he came across as a plain Jane sort of wrestler. I mean, very old school territorial type looking guy, and not part of this new Vince McMahon revolution where everyone needs a gimmick. But he got his gimmick eventually. And I have to admit, even I remembered him and I liked him. I didn't like him when he turned face, to tell you the truth. It almost became inevitable.
Doink the Clown worked much, much better as a heel.
as a heel.
And that wasn't even really his first gimmick. I mean, his first gimmick, I would say, if you want to call it that, would probably be a year earlier, before he became Doink the Clown, when he was in WCW as Big Josh, a lumberjack.
Oh my god!
Because like Doink the Clown is like, you just think about it, like it is something that kind of is a childhood like nightmare, because we all like kind of are scared of clowns, whether we like to admit it or not. I kind of like praise about that, and the fact is like I thought it was an impressive run. Well, the fact is like he had everything. He had the entrance, he had that massive mallet that he seemed to bring out of everywhere. He had, and plus he had the laughter.
Yeah.
It had that effect on me even now.
He was effectively, in some cases, maybe you guys would agree or disagree, he was like a wrestling version of Tim Curry's interpretation of Pennywise.
Yeah, I'd agree. I definitely. But as he progressed, I think WrestleMania 9, I think this is actually something that kind of really made me understand the two Doinks, because I think Vince McMahon obviously knew that Matt was somebody who was very unstable, and he could be, he's fired him several times before. He might need to be fired again, and so he came up with a second Doink. And it's funny in a way, because Vince McMahon has tried to replicate wrestlers in the past, with the fake Razor and the fake Diesel, which was one of the most stupidest things I've ever seen. But he could get away with Doink because Doink would cover the makeup. And I have to admit, the guy who took over from Matt, he looked like Matt, underneath all that makeup still, very, very similar physique wise, facial wise.
Yeah, but he was insane.
No, but you could get away with, like, I remember like they had like a second Sin Cara. Remember the two Sin Caras?
Yeah, one was Mystical, and the original Sin Cara, and the other one was Hunico.
And you could tell that they were different. I mean, for me, I thought to myself they were very different from the get-go, because one of them was a lot bigger. You know what I mean? And
well, it was the fact as well that Sin Cara Negro, which was Hunico, could actually work.
Yeah,
he wasn't a botch monkey.
Yeah. But yeah, these two Doinks, they look very similar, and unfortunately for Matt, he eventually got thrown to the wayside. He created a gimmick character that could be replaced by other people, which was a real shame. I mean, so many people have played Doink over the years.
Really, it's mostly been three. The second Doink at WrestleMania was Steve Keirn of the Fabulous Ones, who at the time was also working in the WWF as Skinner.
Oh, yeah.
So he was the fake Doink at WrestleMania 9. As far as I'm aware, he only ever portrayed Doink at WrestleMania on a couple of other live events where they had two Doinks, and maybe one or two house shows. After Bourne was fired, it went to Steve Lombardi, the Brooklyn Brawler. He put on the face paint for a little while, and then
Really?
the Brooklyn Brawler was he's done it a few times since then as well. But he was the one who took over initially once Matt Bourne was fired. And then after him, they gave it full time to Ray Apollo, who, he did it, I think, through 94, 95. Lombardi was going back to doing other stuff like Knuckleball, for example.
Eugene, didn't he do it?
Eugene did it once. Chris Jericho's done it once for an angle.
Yeah, but it's Chris Jericho. But the guy who plays Eugene, you could tell he's actually trying to be Doink the Clown.
Nick Dinsmore portrayed Doink the Clown. But again, as far as like guys who did it full time as the gimmick, the only, as I said, Kern did it as the second Doink for that angle, and a couple of house show appearances. Lombardi took over after Bourne was fired, and then it was Ray Apollo.
Fair enough.
I was quite surprised he didn't mention Lombardi when they were talking about who else had portrayed Doink.
Yeah, well, he was able to take the character to to other territories. Now, this is the funny thing because I actually didn't realize how much he liked that character, because sometimes people don't like the gimmicks they portray, but he's one of those performers who very much appreciated the gimmick that he created, and that for me I find very satisfying, because some people can be a bit up their own asses regarding what's made them famous, like Christopher Reeve always appreciated being recognized as Superman, for instance. He loved it. Um, there's other people as well who initially I can't think of right now, but they also appreciated what got them so famous, and I'm very happy to know that even he's playing a fucking clown, but nevertheless
Well,
he
I
liked
mean,
it. That was
I mean, you look at his first. He was only there what I want to say 92 to late 93 as Doink the
yeah.
Clown, and he was in the process of building $1 million home. He had a bathtub with engraved into it in 18 karat gold letters, Doink. He thought he was set for life with this. And then, lo and behold, he has the drug violation and he winds up getting himself fired.
Yeah, wrestlers, when they do stuff like engrave their fucking bathtub with the word "doink," you realize that they've got more money than they need, and obviously not enough money once they lose their profession. Um, Still, he went to other territories. He was still Doink the Clown, but he wasn't calling himself Doink because the name was owned by Vince McMahon. When he was he tried, but when he was in ECW,
ECW,
and that was a short run too.
he was born again. Is that right?
Yeah, he initially showed
Like
up as Doink.
a
He
hybrid.
initially showed up as Doink the Clown, and he was hated by the fans. And I mean, this wasn't like heel heat. This was just go away heat. They hated him. So they eventually decided to, a couple of reasons. First was obviously WWF owned the gimmick of Doink, so he wasn't allowed to do that. And also, they decided to go in a different direction, which was Matt would wear like the clown bodysuit, and he would maybe have like half of his face or even just part of his face painted in clown makeup. And he would call himself Born Again. And it had potential to be something really intriguing, where it was like split personalities. You think Mankind back in the WWF 1995, 1996, 97. This had potential for him to have like a split personality where, he would be in two minds. Is he Matt Bourne or is he this clown? And during the matches, what he would do is, after he's beaten down his opponent, he would put like the clown wig, the Doink the Clown wig on them and on his opponent, and he would taunt them. So you're, about how you look like a clown now, you look more of a clown than I do. Now you get to live like I do.
Well, he did only have a short stint within ECW, and it didn't last too long.
Yeah, there's conflicting stories. There's conflicting stories about that. So they said in the documentary that there were some issues that forced him out of ECW. One story that Matt Bourne has told is that he made an offer to go overseas and work for another promoter. He had an offer to go and work for another promoter overseas, and Bourne set the price ridiculously high because he actually wanted to stay in ECW and continue working the Born Again gimmick. But the promoter actually met the demand. So it's like, well, fuck, I can't pass up all this money.
Paul Heyman?
No. This promoter overseas, I think it was in Japan.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry,
he was supposed to go for like an overseas stint in Japan. He'd made like a ridiculous demand, but the promoter, actually met it. And he said, well, fuck, I can't pass up all this money. So he got Paul Heyman's blessing to go. And then when he comes back to the States, about a month later, Paul Heyman won't answer his calls. Now, that's the story that Matt Bourne has told. Shane Douglas, I believe less than 6 months ago, also spoke about this. And he was talking about it, and he said that, well, Matt didn't want to give up being Doink the Clown. which was supposed to be the conclusion of the Born Again angle. He was going to just completely cut ties altogether with being Doink the Clown. But he decided he didn't want to do that. He potentially could go back to the WWF one day. He was going to make a lot of money on royalties, and people were actually wanting to book him as Doink the Clown on the independent circuit. So he didn't really feel comfortable giving that up.
Well, yeah, totally. I mean, it's a meal ticket. I can totally understand that.
And plus, I mean, the Born Again run is one of the strongest runs he had, because he had phenomenal matches. He was really good storytelling. It was believable. You know, it wasn't one of those things where it was kind of stupid. It was kind of like, did actually like kind of bleed into it enough that it actually kind of felt legit. You know, that it was literally something going on in this guy's head, because like this guy was a bit of a mental health guy.
Oh yeah, he portrayed a very convincing psychopath. He's one of the few people in wrestling who made you believe he was psychotic.
So, I did notice that he kind of evolved his gimmick when he was on the independent circuit. Like he fought Hacksaw Jim Duggan in some bloody school, in some school hall or something like that, and he started becoming more like the Joker. Would you agree?
I don't know if it was just a case of maybe he was having an off night. He hadn't applied the face paint on as thick as he usually did. But he decided for some bizarre reason that 30 years after he got fired from Mid-South and he had all this heat with Hacksaw, that he's going to take that opportunity then to start shooting on him in the middle of the ring.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can tell that, you know, he hasn't really learned a lot from his previous encounters with all the things, with all the fuck ups that he's had. You know, the guy was still fucking up. Someone like Hacksaw Jim Duggan is a long-time ally and friend. You know, they should have a very respectful match to a degree and just pander to the audience here and there. But he wanted to take it to another level, which he didn't need to go. I mean, they're veterans. They didn't need to go there.
Yeah, Bourne had said he wanted to use a chair on Duggan, and then he wanted Duggan to attack him with a 2x4. And Duggan had said, "Look, there's 100 people out there. You know, let's just, you know, have a walk. You know, which, you know, just have an easy match, do a couple of, you know, spots, you know, just to please the people, and go home."
Exactly, and like it's not like these guys were in their prime either. You don't want to be seeing like Hacksaw Jim Duggan take a chair shot, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous, you know. And
but the thing is, as well, he told the referee, you know, he says, "I'm getting my board. Tell Matt we'll sort it out in the locker room. You know, if we'll finish this in the locker room where we should be." And lo and behold, Matt doesn't return to the locker room. He actually just, you know, goes out the fire exit, gets in his car, and leaves. It was all pre-planned on Matt's part.
Doesn't he have his wallet there or anything like that he needs to get hold of? Shit.
No, he's probably left that all in his car, because the way it sounds is that Matt just pre-planned to go in there, shoot on Duggan, and then leave.
Yeah, very, very bizarre and very disrespectful to Hacksaw Jim Duggan once again. Like I said, regarding Hacksaw, he's just somebody. I know Balls Mahoney you mentioned earlier, but he just generally seems like somebody who he hasn't got like there's not like much negative talk about him. So generally, you're kind of surprised that, you know, somebody just wants to cause beef with a guy like Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Once again, it was good to see that he didn't suffer fools lightly. You know, he was going to actually fight Matt if Matt really wanted to make it into a shoot. And then someone like Axel doesn't know what to believe. You know, if Matt he double crossed people in the past like he did with Brian Blair, so he might say, "Yeah, I want to just do a work," and then next, you know, he might turn it into a shoot. You just can't tell. You know what I mean? So yeah, I felt sorry for Hacksaw after all of that. You know, and he's at both their ages, they don't need to be doing that shit. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. They're legends, you know, like just you know, just pander to the crowd a bit. Yeah, you mentioned do a couple of spots. But I mean,
I do wonder how that fight would have gone down if it had taken place in the locker room, because Hacksaw back in the day, you know, he used to beat up bars full of NFL players.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that. Yeah, I mean,
I mean, yeah, Hacksaw, even at the age he's now, he's still a tough guy. Yeah.
What, is he in his 70s now?
Yeah, and he still can handle himself.
Oh, I'm sure he can handle himself even in his 70s. I'm just wondering. I'm just surprised that he's still actually working. I mean, someone like him should just be doing autographs, and doing, charity dinners and stuff like that. I'm absolutely surprised, but fair enough.
He did appearances for Future Shock, which is a indie promo in Manchester. He had to clothesline somebody, and they probably had the biggest smile on their face afterwards ever.
I've just looked up Jim Duggan's age. He's actually only 69.
Oh, there you go.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go. So there you go, but close enough. And like how we mentioned how Vince McMahon tied up people like Undertaker from doing other things outside of the WWE. So everything Undertaker did, it would be within the WWE. So Vince McMahon could obviously profit for it and control one of his biggest assets of all time. But you do feel in a way that people like Hacksaw Jim Duggan deserves kind of a similar treat. It's not the same treatment, but a similar treatment of being taken care of. Like when I go to see football matches, like you see Liverpool play, you can see people like Ian Rush and Kenny Dalglish given the red carpet treatment. That football club is always going to look after some of their greatest assets. And you look at somebody like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who is a stalwart of the WWE. Everyone fucking loves him. He always puts a smile on people's faces. He's a bit like a bit like a B-Tech Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean? To a degree. You would hope that the WWE would look after him to such a degree that he doesn't have to be pounding his body in school halls, just to make a buck.
I think the way Vince McMahon looks at it is the fact is that the Undertaker was such an enduring, long-lasting gimmick, whereas Jim Duggan was basically just Jim Duggan with the volume turned up, and he was in and out of the WWF for a number of years. So let's see, he got fired when he got caught with cocaine and weed in his car with the Iron Sheik. That was when Babyface, he and the Sheik were feuding, and babyfaces and heels were not supposed to be seen together. And lo and behold, they get pulled over on the Jersey Turnpike, and the police find cocaine and marijuana in the car, which apparently was all Sheik's. But
and
it didn't help that I think Duggan's father was a senior police officer at the time as well.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised. Not surprised remotely now you mentioned that. Nice comment here from, by the way, there's Jim. He's in the comments there. What the frack? Yeah, mate. But nice comment here from Daniel Vance. Even gladiators finally earned their freedom. Sad that they're still breaking their bodies at such an old age. Yeah, I just don't like seeing someone like Hacksaw having to take slams and stuff like that. Even though he might feel like he's still able to, he should be living his golden years. And you see those sort of parts of the WWE where they're just a whole bunch of old school wrestlers talking and doing breakdowns and stuff like that. I would love to see Jim doing stuff like that. You know what I mean? All of these sorts of things. Maybe Jim would be a great color commentator. You know what I mean? In my opinion, you add something different, but all of these sort of things. I don't know. I find him very endearing. In some way, in some capacity. I would love WWE just to make sure that this guy, for whatever years he's got left remaining, has a very peaceful, decent life, because I feel like he's earned it for what he's given to that company, the character that he's portrayed, and being a cornerstone part of the furniture of the WWE, regardless of being fired. He's still he's massive to them. He could come to United Kingdom and make fucking English fans sing USA. You know what I mean?
He's done it.
He's done it. I've seen it. You know what I mean? When the guy, he's anyway, this love fest for Jim Duggan. I do apologize. So going back to Matt, he's at a stage of his career now where he's jumping from different territories, or whatever territories that are left in independent circuits and so on. He's now playing some sort of B-Tech Ivet Yankovic or something like that. Some sort of doctor who.
No, he's still doing Doinkish.
No, he was doing Doink the Clown. I think what you're referring to is the woman he wound up with, who was his girlfriend. She was a a valet for someone who was doing a doctor gimmick.
So in a way, he ended up changing his gimmick because of her, because of maybe how
No,
people
he was
perceived
still
her.
doing Doink the Clown on the independent circuit. He didn't work as a doctor, whereas his girlfriend, again, she was the valet for some guy who was doing like a doctor gimmick, and she would crack the opponent over the head with a bedpan.
Yeah, some of that. That was beautiful. Reminded me of when Austin hit McMahon. Go on.
I mean, we should. Let's. I mean, the fact is that he talks about his wife. Well, his ex-wife talks about the fact that that they met around this time when he was kind of still was around the independent circuit. Because I'm not sure what year they met. Was 1990 something. I can't remember what year it was on 90.
Well, that latest girl, like it was like early 2010s. I think in 2012.
No. Talking about his ex-wife.
Right. Well, hang on. So Maria walked out in '93 when he got fired. Late '93 when he got fired from the WWF. Maybe early '94. I think probably he met Michelle. It was either '94 or '95. But he said to her, "I'm Doink the Clown," and she said, "You do birthday parties?" She had no clue. She had no clue who he was.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant. Comment here from Daniel Vaughn saying, "Or make older wrestlers fight like Steven Seagal. One touch and the other guy has to go flying." No. We don't need those finger pokes of doom type scenarios. One's enough. Yeah.
Well, Daniel Vance, Scotty Too Hotty does the indie circuit here. I mean, he still does the worm, even at 50 years old.
I mean, I don't mind, for example, if you're going to see, I don't know, let's say Arn Anderson bust out a spine buster every once in a while. That I don't mind. Like he catches somebody out, just by surprise and hits them with a spine buster. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, look, a 50-year-old Scotty Too Hotty, even that's still capable. But almost 70-year-old fucking Hacksaw Jim Duggan. No, I'm done. You don't need to be doing this, mate.
If anything, he should be at ringside for a match and cracking somebody with a 2x4.
Yeah, some sort of like manager or something. And I heard like somebody wants Hulk Hogan to come back for WrestleMania 40.
No, Hulk Hogan allegedly wants to come back and have one final retirement match under the WWE banner, and he's also wanting Stone Cold Steve Austin for it.
That will be one of the most train-wrecking matches of all time, because like if you've seen Hulk Hogan's body, like he's like the Bionic Man. He's got all these fucking like bits of metal coming out of his spine. It's kind of freaky with all the leg drops he's done. It's like fucked up his back.
Well, we thought Austin was probably not going to be able to go at WrestleMania, but he pretty much stole the show with Kevin Owens.
Yeah, but he had Kevin Owens who can still
Kevin Owens
go.
is very, very young. He can feed for him.
Yeah.
Austin, I think, did take at least a couple of bumps, but nothing major.
And honestly,
it should have closed WrestleMania.
Yeah. It's not. It won't be like this. Like, it's going to be very much okay. You're going to see these two guys line up and get themselves into position, and little bits of adjusting before they pull up a move. Honestly, it doesn't need to happen. Like, I worry for someone like Hulk Hogan, even though I shouldn't. But nevertheless, I don't want to see the guy paralyze himself in the fucking ring. And same goes with Steve Austin too. It was all good that he had one more match, but he shouldn't. That's just that, man. Jesus Christ! I mean, that's beyond ridiculous. It really is. Like, sometimes people just need to be remembered for what they did in the past and not come back and ruin their legacy by doing something in the present. Yeah, I don't want that to happen. I don't want The Rock to come back or anything like that to fight Roman Reigns. Like, that's just bullshit as far as I'm concerned. I don't want any of that bollocks. I don't want Austin to come back. Maybe I can handle Cena coming back, but right now he's just basically jobbing to people to elevate them and go back to Hollywood. He's kind of become Rock 2.0 in that sense. You know what I mean? So anyway, going back to Matt.
Yeah, going back to Matt, I was going to mention the fact that outside of the ring, his personal life was absolutely horrendous. I'm amazed that they were able to speak to two of his ex-wives, and both of them still at least had something, positive to say about their experience with him. The last one, Michelle, not the last woman he was with, but his second wife, Michelle. The story that she retold of him completely knocking her out and her waking up in hospital, that's absolutely horrendous. And the fact that he then didn't remember doing it.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I mean,
the thing about
there's a thing. There's a thing though that if you're constantly on drugs, there are times when you go into blackouts. It's basically if you're on a sort of thing, you do it when you're alcoholic, or you do it when you're like on a hand, you go into blackouts and you do not remember anything you did. And that's how you can be like, people say, "Oh yeah, you did X, Y, and Z." And like, a lot of people who were chronic users of any kind of drug, especially alcoholics, do not know what they did when they black out.
I think that alcohol and cocaine is going to make you a little bit more, alcohol to a degree can mellow you out, but too much of it, as well as you mix it with cocaine, it can make you into a ferocious individual. It really can. Cocaine is not a mellow drug. It's a hyper drug. It's supposed to give you a kick, and it might make someone like Matt, who's obviously on various cocktails of God knows what, a pumped up individual as well. Um, Unfortunately, he ends up having to fight his own partner, and yeah, it's
I'm amazed she took him back.
I'm amazed too, because like a lot of these women, they've been all three of these women at some point have been abused by Matt, and they've all got wonderful things to say about him, which is kind of remarkable, to tell you the truth. It's I'm lost for words.
She's another one who left him and didn't take anything. She just took the kids and suitcases of clothes and left.
Yeah. Is Matt in the Hall of Fame?
No.
Do you think he will ever be in the Hall of Fame?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Hello there, Mr. System. You got too much baggage, you'd say?
I don't know if it's too much baggage. It could be. I think there's going to be people who point to this episode of Dark Side of the Ring and point out the domestic violence, and that will go against him if they ever talk about putting him in the WWE Hall of Fame.
And plus,
yeah, I agree.
Matt Moore, before he passed, did a lot of like shoot interviews, some of which he didn't really speak in the most terms about Vince McMahon. So very unlikely is the word I'm going to say.
Yeah, I think actually just going to this episode though as well, like, if this is like one of the last things people remember about Matt Bourne, the last time people talk about Matt Bourne, it's going to be because of this episode, and unfortunately, it hasn't left him in a good light. Chronic drug user, a guy who derailed his own career after creating one of the most memorable gimmicks in wrestling history, and a wife beater. It's not good. Bring him into WWE. I mean, it's going to leave a sour taste in people's mouths. And who the hell's going to induct him? So maybe Hacksaw, but even then, who knows? But yeah, not good at all.
What did you guys think about the coverage of his death and the conspiracy about did he overdose or was he killed?
I've got nothing really to add to that. I can understand. Look, I just to go on a tangent here. I have my own issues regarding my mum. I always thought that there was a lot of negligence coming to from the people who work at the hospital when it came to my mum, and they didn't do a good job in saving her life. So, but I'm never gonna. But I stage in my life now where I can't do anything about it. At the same time, I can understand people who love a particular person have an issue with somebody else who that person's life was in their hands, and then blame that person for possibly killing that person. I can totally understand that. At the same time, I just don't know, and I never will know. So I've got nothing really to to give on that. I can understand that the family, the daughter and the ex-wife saying, that she killed him. At the same time, there was something she said though. There was something she said, that lady, the girlfriend.
Connie.
She said, if I could give my life for his, I would. And I don't know. I found that very patronizing, a little bit. I'm not sure how you felt about that comment.
I'm not sure how
But yeah.
legitimate it was. I don't want to cast aspersions on that. I will say though, for anybody who wasn't aware, that at least the Dark Side did clarify that the police report found that, he hadn't been poisoned. They did a precautionary investigation into a potential homicide, but as far as they were concerned, it was an accidental overdose on Bourne's part, and that was the findings of the forensic pathologist too.
Yeah.
The only thing that obviously did cause an issue, and is rife for conspiracy, is the fact that Connie had found him with foam coming out of his mouth at like 6:30 in the morning. She'd wiped it off and called a friend, and then she'd called 911 at 9 a.m. in the morning. So like 2.5 hours between her finding him with this foam in his mouth and calling her friend, and then her calling 911 to get medics there to try and save him.
Yeah, Matt did his own drugs. He didn't need somebody like Connie to do the drugs for him. He was doing it all by himself. But once again, that comment she said, if I could swap places and die and he lives, I found that a very, very patronizing comment. But I'm not going to try and make too much of that. But it did stand out a little bit out of all the things. If she never said that, I wouldn't really give a fuck either way and not really have an opinion too much, to tell you the truth. It's just something that we would never know. Boss man?
I was going to say, well, two things have stood up to me. One, I don't think she did poison him. I think it's just one of those things where he had easy access to, like, narcotics because, like, his narcotic use had more or less been demonstrated throughout the episode, and he had ease of access to pharmaceutical narcotics. So there is that. But as Shredder just said, the fact that she found him basically with, unresponsive, so that everyone else in that situation, well, I'd hope, would phone the authorities or phone medical assistance straight away. Don't wait 3 bloody hours to do it. And that's the kind of thing that's like was a little bit. Just kept me
American
thinking,
healthcare.
you're not on the upper so it's on.
American healthcare for you. They're probably wondering if they're going to be able to if they're going to go bankrupt after calling the people to take him in the hospital in the first place. Like 50 grand for a fucking ambulance or some bullshit like that.
But it was easy access to prescription drugs because they were looking after Connie's mother, and the overdose, I believe, was a mixture of diamorphine and hydrocodone.
Okay, so so that's how the episode ended. Regarding Matt, with his ex-lovers all blaming each other and pointing fingers and wondering if he was killed or not. It's a shame, really, that's going to be a part of his legacy when it should really be what he did in the ring and creating the amazing Doink the Clown.
No, I'm surprised that hang on. I'm surprised that they finished with this. They decided to finish with the conspiracy. Obviously, the belief from his daughter that his girlfriend poisoned him, and her denying it. And obviously they did clarify. The police report found that there was no foul play. But what surprises me is they didn't mention the fact that Matt's ex-wife and daughter filed a wrongful death suit against the WWE in 2015.
And did they get any compensation for that?
Oh, hell no. The lawsuit was thrown out. It was that Konstantin Kryos, whatever the hell his name is. He's the guy who's been routinely suing WWE over and over again and never been successful once. But the wrongful death lawsuit basically said it was they had created the culture of violence that led to his injuries, his illnesses, and subsequently his mental health issues and his drug use. But the lawsuit was thrown out. I think it was because they couldn't prove that the WWE was responsible for him having CTE if he had it at all.
And back in 2013, when he did die, there were I don't know what arguments they were going to use, but by that particular period, so many wrestlers have died at such a premature age.
And we knew a hell of a lot about CTE because this was, 7 years after Chris Benoit.
Yeah, for sure. It could have been maybe a good way of helping your argument if you were trying to sue the WWE. Whether they probably did use Chris Benoit, but who knows? Anyway, let's mark this particular episode. I'll go with you guys. We're gonna give it out of 10.
I'd give it a good solid 8 because again, I did not know half of this. I didn't know about his drug use. I didn't know about his difficult personality. I'll use that. And it was good to hear like a lot. I think because usually when it's on that side, it's only like a handful of people, but this had like a good swathe. We had like his ex-wives, we had people from all over the wrestling community, from Mick Foley to Tom Pritchard to Jim Duggan to B. Brian Blair and all this sort of stuff. So they all give context to this guy. It kind of made me sad in a way that, if this guy was clean all his life, I got the Doink gimmick, but he was able to be clean with it, how far he could have gotten, because I think they could have made Doink, especially in that period, because that period was a bit of a rough period for WWE just in general. He could have been like the standout kind of like ultra psychotic heel that they could have used, because I mean, they tried to do that with what's his name, Psycho Zed. They tried to do that with so many characters and they just failed because that person couldn't present that. Whereas Matt Ball was, as I said before, believable. So, but it was really sad. I mean, it was a really sad episode, and it kind of dealt with a difficult topic for me, which was domestic abuse. So, and I thought it was helpful in that all the women involved did get out eventually, and like in one sense, he did let her go. So I like the fact that all the women got out, but even still, I just wish this guy could have gotten the professional help he obviously did need.
Yep. Before I go into Shred, Daniel Vance is saying Strange New World tomorrow. When the Secret Invasion will probably come out on the weekend. We're just a bit overlogged. And unfortunately, when it comes to our channel, Marvel doesn't necessarily do that well with the view, so we decided to put that one on the back burner and focus on stuff that does do well for us, and wrestling does well for us, Star Trek does well for us. So yeah, and we got obviously our Sodomizer podcast on Fridays, so yeah, we'll be talking about Andrew Tate a little bit more on that particular day, as well as a few other things. Shredder, regarding this episode, what would you like to give it out of 10?
Okay, for me, this is probably going to... It's been a fairly solid episode, but I would give it a 7 out of 10. I think this may so far have been the weakest of the 4 episodes that they've done on this season of Dark Side of the Ring. I felt there was probably a few people that they should have interviewed that they didn't. I think there's probably been some aspects of his career that they should have covered, and also his personal issues as well, which they didn't delve that much into. Again, they didn't even go into the details for exactly of why he left ECW, just that there was personal circumstances. So again, I think they should have covered a bit more in depth when it came to that. Again, a lot of the stuff he's done in the interviews since, the couple of years that he was doing shoot interviews. Again, they could maybe delved into that a little bit, but overall, I think it was good in telling overall the story of Matt Bourne and the issues that he had, and also the personal demons he was going through. But like I said, I've enjoyed the other 3 episodes more. Either the Magnum TA story was at least a happier ending because the guy was still around and able to tell his story. Chris and Tammy was very, very informative. It was a great mini documentary, I would say, on Chris Candido. And last week, Mike and Eddie Graham, that was one hell of a look into the tragic circumstances of those two guys.
Yeah. The
So
suicide curse.
and the whole issue with suicide on the male side of that family, and it made Mike Graham a very sympathetic figure, whereas Jose would probably have agreed with me. He's in more recent years become a bit of a wrestling lol cow because of all the stuff he made claims about, like, oh, I got rid of the band of midgets. I told Chris Benoit I was going to cut his head off. You know, I'm the toughest guy in the fucking locker room since Meng. I'm the guy that brought Hulk Hogan in, all that shit. But again, this was a solid 7 out of 10. I would definitely recommend giving it a watch, but it's been the weakest of the 4 so far. We'll see how the rest of the series progresses.
Yeah, I'm also giving it a 7. That was in my mind too, regarding this episode. It felt kind of almost a little bit run of the mill, like wrestler, has an opportunity to improve himself, does drugs, does alcohol, fucks his life up, jumps between different territories, beats on his spouse. I mean, I feel like we've been here with other wrestlers from other Dark Side episodes too, so it didn't feel very original. It was fascinating knowing about Matt because obviously he was there from the beginning with WrestleMania and all of that. And I think the most fascinating element for me was the creation of Doink the Clown, and how he embraced that particular gimmick when you would think that he would hate it, when it was probably the best thing that's ever happened to him in his wrestling career. All right, what's next week, my friend?
The Junkyard Dog.
Oh no!
Which I'm looking forward to.
Mate, I was wanting some fucking Marty Jannetty. When's that coming?
Marty Jannetty apparently is going to be the season finale. So the order of the episodes going forward is going to be Junkyard Dog, The Tragic Fall of Adrian Adonis, Bash at the Beach 2000.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
Abdullah the Butcher, Legacy of Blood.
Lovely.
Bam Bam Bigelow, The Beast from the East. That's probably the one I'm looking forward to the most. And then finally, The World According to Marty Jannetty.
Yeah, the Bam Bam Bigelow, I think, is going to be a bit of a sad one, in my opinion. But okay, so Junkyard Dog, interesting. I never really knew there was much that his career could be worthy of a Dark Side episode. But I guess I'm going to learn something next week.
Oh yeah, Bam Bam was great.
But Junkyard Dog, that is going to be an education for anybody who wants to watch it. I presume they're going to go a lot into his days in Mid-South, and in particular the racism in that territory when he was, the top black worker there.
Yeah, but I know he worked with people like Jerry Lawler and stuff like that, and tagged with them and all of that. Ric Flair, and yeah. But he was part of that era.
I hope Jim Cornette is there to tell the story of how he sucked up to a promoter. He got heat for a promoter who was a member of the KKK, a guy called George C. Culkin, and he said, and Dog went on camera and said, and by the way, I would like to just give a shout out to my good friend, Mr. George C. Culkin, which obviously pissed off the rest of the clan.
He also was oh God, Junkyard Dog. He was he tagged with something Murdoch, didn't he? And
Dick
he
Murdoch.
was part of the clan. Dick Murdoch. He was part of the clan as well. With like
Dick Murdoch was in the clan. I've never heard that story.
Really? Because there was a story of how Dick tried to take.
You thinking of somebody else?
No, it was definitely a Murdoch, and he took Dusty Rhodes with him to see the clan.
Oh no, he was in the clan. Yeah, he was. Yeah. Captain Redneck. He was a member. He was a member of the KKK.
Oh my God! How good it feels to know something that you didn't.
I'm going to call something for a future. I'm going to call something for a future Dark Side episode. All right. If this doesn't happen, I'll be proud to be wrong, but I'm betting Hannibal is going to be on the Flaming and Bill the Butcher one.
Oh, probably.
Okay. But yeah, just go back to Murdoch. He tried to induct Dusty Rhodes, and Dusty Rhodes was not having any of it. which is really good to know because Dusty Rhodes, there's something about him that he obviously has a very massive appreciation for black culture. He's got that vibe about him. You know what I mean? So I'm very happy to know that he turned down the plan.
Dusty basically pandered in many ways to the black audience. He went and drank in black bars.
Yeah.
He was trying to be a hero to the black audience. There was another wrestler whose name escapes me, but he got a hell of a lot of heat in territories where he got arrested drinking in a blacks only bar. And he immediately afterwards he became a hero to the black section of the audience and got booed out the building by the white people.
Yeah.
I mean, do you not remember what happened in the WWE when they had Dusty Rhodes?
Well, they stuck him in polka dots.
They
gave him Sapphire.
A Sapphire who ended up being bought by Ted DiBiase.
They need to do a Dark Side of the Ring. What happened to Sapphire? I want to know that. I want to know that story.
Sapphire.
Oh, we can go over ideas for the next season of Dark Side after this one's finished. Like we've done previously.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
I just remember when Ted DiBiase bought Sapphire off Flaming.
I remember that.
Like paid for Sapphire off and stuff like that. That was so good.
And then WrestleMania 7 or Royal Rumble, I think it might have been. You had Dusty Rhodes and Dustin Rhodes versus Virgil and Ted DiBiase, and that was like the beginning of Virgil breaking up with Ted. And honestly, that was probably the worst thing that ever happened to Virgil, because once he became a solo wrestler, it fell apart for him. The best thing that ever happened to Virgil was to be Ted DiBiase's bitch. So anyway, we're done here. Thank you very much, Fred. Thank you very much, Gaz. We'll be back next week with some more Dark Side of the Ring, talking about the Junkyard Dog, and we'll be back tomorrow talking about Strange New Worlds, as well as Friday doing our weekly podcast. And at some point, we will be talking about Secret Invasion as well, the new series by Marvel. So keep an eye out for that. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube, the greatest YouTube channel you never heard of. Take care. Bye-bye.